Hey guys, you're listening to the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, where we talk about uncaging your divinely gifted wild heart to be as free and expansive as you were born to be. My goal is to use our stories, guest interviews, and your questions to tease out what has been keeping your wild heart under wraps. I'm your host, Mielle Fox, and together we will shatter the myths of our old stories to set our wild heart free. So thanks for choosing you and showing up today. I'm very excited for today's guest, Cat Caldwell Myers. She herself uses the word adventure in everything that she does, from her website to her podcast to her book called The Adventure Paradox, which I love the title because it really is exactly what it says it is. She's an author, just a fun mom. She's a horse girl. She's got the same dog breed I have. I'm kind of like, whoa, this is just too much simpatico. Like, I have to have her on the podcast. So here we are on a beautiful winter's day, fresh from a long holiday of skiing, which, no, not me, Kat. She's home and willing to spend a few minutes with us. So here we are. Kat, welcome. Welcome to the show. She's out there in the frozen of Zoom.
I'm here. I'm back.
There she's back, right? Like in the ether, and then she's back. Welcome to the show. Hopefully our signal holds.
Oh my gosh, I hope so too. Isn't technology amazing how it can bring us
Oh, yeah.
together, but also remind us that we are so far away? When it connects us or disconnects us, it's like we are not.
It's interesting because as we're talking, we're sort of, it's coming in and out. So hopefully this will hold. But I think it's amazing. Last week on your podcast, you're recording from the mountains of Italy while you're away on a ski holiday. And I'm thinking, is that not amazing? Her signal is so clear. It's so great. And yet here I am, probably 6 states away. She's in the Midwest. I'm on the East Coast. And yet we can't get a clean signal. Huh. I wonder what's going on. Don't know. But that being said, for anybody out there, tonight is the night that the 7 planets are actually going to be all aligned. Good luck if you can see them. We won't, because we got a snowstorm coming. But when I think about that, what goes through my mind is, oh, Lottie, that's a lot of energy. That's a lot of electric energy that's coming and going with all of this happening. So the fact that the signal cut out, I'm like, yep, that's no surprise. So with that being said, tell us what prompted you to create the adventure paradox? Where were you in your life when you said, whoa, something's got to give?
Such a great question. I'm not sure there was a particular point. I think there are many false summits in life where you realize this one changed me. I think I always, as a young girl, felt like when it came to horses or animals or nature, this was it. Like I had arrived. There's nothing to argue with. It is what it is. So that deep knowing was always in me. And then I think when we were living in the suburbs of Chicago and starting our family and close to family, and I just felt this deep call. I was very grounded in Midwestern nature, but it did not really feel like home. There was some part of it that felt like home. My issues with ticks would be a perfect example of me stepping into fear, right? Like, why would you live in a place where this tiny little thing could give you a disease that will mess you up for life potentially, right? Like, and your animals, why? And then you have to take all these extra meds for them, you have a choice in the adventure, and then also the paradoxes that rise, the desire to be close to family, my hugs that take all of us away from what's really true and grounding for us. And I think that I didn't gain the perspective. I've actually played with rebranding to the adventure perspective, just so you know, because you can't like always see it until you go and do the thing and then come back from it. And so when I took this huge adventure, which is what the book is about, as a young mom with a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old children, and then our dog and 3 horses, 6,000 miles around the country, essentially finding myself as a young mom, it was in writing that book, because I said I would write a book about it, that I saw it for what it was and really saw this is the jumping off place, like the next chapter, because the power is always in the next chapter. Whatever we're doing now, it's gonna impact that next chapter. So I don't know if that
Oh my
answered your
gosh.
question,
It
but
does. It
that's what's
really
coming
does.
up for me.
And yeah, what I really love to hear you say is, the book was the source of being able to work your way through the things that needed to be addressed and tended to, or healed, or worked on, or revealed, or released, or whatever that needs to be for each of us. But your observation of one, is it a paradox or is it a perspective? And of course, you and I could go down the rabbit hole of what do we project as our reality?
Mhm.
Is it one of many? Because we all know that the way the quantum field works, truthfully, there are many different potential perspectives, but the one that you actually exist in or live out or see visually in front of you is the one that you have in that particular window of time chosen, and that's why it becomes what your perceived reality is at the time. But because of the way the quantum works, it could be anything. I mean, it could be anything, and it could be whenever you decide you want it to be. That's the beauty of it all. But the other thing that I love that you say is that this writing of this book and this exposing of all these areas for yourself that had sort of covered what you knew to be your deepest piece of yourself that you've known all along, but it just sort of got a little muddied up along the way, is that it's serving as a springboard for the next. And I really believe that that is the beauty of what I call the treasure hunt of this lifetime,
Mm,
meaning you don't really know what's right around the next corner. You don't really know which path is going to lead you to that next thing, but if you're willing to be open and curious and give it a whirl and be adventurous, the adventure paradox, the adventure perspective, then this serves as the springboard, the platform, the breadcrumb, the whatever you want to call that, the GPS ding ding, the whatever, to the next. And it's a beautiful observation of what we sometimes feel is in the way, is not in the way, is the way. Like it's not in the way,
mm,
it actually is the way. And
mm,
sometimes you
mm.
don't see it when you're in it. It's sort of like it's a little bit like the funhouse mirror. Like sometimes you're just too close to it, you don't really see it, and then you kind of have to step away to get a different version of that, depending on what mirror you're looking at.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's a little bit like you don't realize how sick you were until you feel better, and then you're like, man, I was really sick. Like
Mm,
you have to get out of it and get a little more bird's eye viewy to really grasp, like, oh, now I'm seeing it. Now I get it.
mhm.
Yeah. So I have to say, OMG, kudos to you packing two kids, dogs, and horses, 6,000 miles through all kinds of terrain. And I'm just so curious, like, were there times where you stopped yourself and said, whoa, what the hell am I doing here? Like, why am I doing this? Or did you always have that burn of keep going, just keep going, see what's next?
Mm. Well, there were definitely moments of pause. And I think that sort of when do you arrive question, right? And also, where are we going and why? And how quickly do we need to get there? I love that you're also a horse person and that you travel with your horses. So, watching their cues, their stress. How's their poop looking? The truth is, it's the same in humans, but we often forget to really slow down and check in with ourselves. Like, how's our digestion? What have we been eating? Have we just been pushing too much? This last adventure I just took with my husband for a week and then just with a group of ladies in Italy, it was the first time I've traveled that far around the world since having children and since in my
How
40s. And so it was like remembering what some of those feelings jet lag are like and having this experience to pull on this wisdom from when I was in my 20s and when I was a teenager and when I was in my 30s and traveled, and then also having this perspective of how different it is now that I'm in my 40s, the different responsibilities I have, the things I'm trying to do, and learning to be a little bit more tender. And that was a big piece of that adventure, and a lot of the pauses that came up, which I do write about in the book. And some of them I chose to keep out because it's amazing when you take a 6-week odyssey how many stories there are. And when you stop and look at, which ones are really important. And one of the biggest ones is slow down. That lesson came up over and over and over. And, it's kind of like this technology thing. Like, it's amazing that we can connect, but I actually don't even know where in the world you are. Like, we're in totally different spaces, like totally different time zones potentially. It's really interesting how when we load a horse, and I'm sure you've seen the comic strips, but we load a horse into a horse trailer and we're able to take them over 60 miles per hour, right? And they're cool with this. They're like, okay, now we're in the desert. Interesting. Like, we were at the ocean earlier. Different here, the hay tastes funny, but like, what's that really doing to us, And so an airplane, I mean, I remember Martin Luther King Jr., who I'm a huge fan of, he talked about live in a world where you can hick in Los Angeles and New York. This world, my friend, is the same world of 200 years ago that our horses are so connected to. But here we are with all of our fast forward, and we can go so fast and so far. And then I can hear the shaman I used to work with saying, but at what cost? Like, often the cost is that we become ungrounded because we're so hung up on gotta get there, gotta be here by this time, gotta do that. We're just the infodemic, right? So I could
Yeah.
tell you a few stories, but I think in summation, it's slow down. And also, where are you going? Like, and how will you know when you've arrived? And that's where the paradox comes in, because every day we wake up a new beginning and we get to really challenge ourselves. Like, what are we going for today? What will it feel like when we arrive? And then the repeat. And then I know you're familiar with Kathy Heller, who's a huge fan of Seth Godin, but he talks about the dip,
Yeah.
which comes on the flip side of writing the book, winning the award, taking the trip. So I feel like for me, slowing down to like really be present in the adventure of each moment, that was the huge lesson. And I feel like children teach us that if we're open to it, know, and getting into that different kind of time. And so do animals, and so does nature.
Yes. So what, oh gosh, this I could talk for hours on this because it just digs into the deepest place of how my brain chooses to work. And what I think is so fascinating is we as humans with our uber brains, we just think we've got it all set. And when the reality is we really don't. If we look around ourselves and look at how does nature work, how do our animals exist, especially, and I don't really care whether it's your cat, your bird, your dog, your horse, they're not worrying about if the stock market is up or down. They're not worrying about if it's going to snow tomorrow or today. They're not worrying about where are we going in the trailer? What are we doing? How are we getting there? Their biggest
Mm-hmm.
piece is being present in the moment and living and existing in
Mm-hmm.
the moment. And for people who say, well, they're just animals, let me tell you, if you get outside of your head and pay attention and really tap into the rhythm of what is around you, and I think it's easier when you're way out in nature the way I live, but you could do it in a city, I guess, if you really kind of ground in. But that reflection that comes back to us in all things non-human is the lesson within itself, really. It's the reminder of stay present, stay now. And when you're saying, what does it mean to really, what does it mean to get to the destination? And my answer is sure, every day is a new day and you wake up, but guess what? Your destination is now. Your destination is this moment. Your destination is how are you experiencing life in the now? How is it feeling? How are you moving through it? Not what's going on tomorrow, because truthfully, slip on the banana, you don't get tomorrow. And not what happened yesterday, because guess what? Time machine doesn't take you there either. So quite frankly, all you got's right now. I mean, really, that's truly, really the reality of it, but we lose sight of it. Our human loses sight of that. And it's a great reminder. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, something I'm thinking of right now is like this idea that horses know what's going to happen 4 days before it happens. And I'm sure you've had the experience working with horses of the storm coming in. And like they know, they kind of let you know, like, it's coming, we can feel it even before we know. And I feel like there is, when we work with animals, and a girlfriend of mine who I interviewed said, animals are nature. I thought that was really interesting because it's like,
Hmm.
just like we are inherently natural beings as well, right? Yes, we have these amazing brains and we get all excited about all these things we can do with them and this incredible culture we've created and technology and systems, and look back at our tools and all this stuff. And it's great. It's great. It's amazing. I'm so grateful to be alive in this time. And are we forgetting tap into that intuition, that premonition, that possibility of not only what's happening in the now, but like what's coming in these next few days? And also, how's my body, that body brain from a few days ago? Like, how am I really doing? And this is where I think some of my favorite people to hang out with are the people who are so deeply tapped into that. They're just so authentically themselves. There's no like pretending to be this other person. It's just totally who they are, which is exactly how animals are and exactly how nature is. Nature's like not trying to pretend it's a rainy day when it's sunny. It's like, we're sunny, you know? This
Right.
is it.
Yeah, it's not like your tomato plant that doesn't bear forth an amazing tomato, is pouting like, oh, boo hoo, I didn't make a great piece of fruit here. Doesn't happen. It just is or it isn't. It's not like you walk through nature and, the brook is not flowing the way we think it should as a human, but the brook doesn't sit there and say, oh, gosh, I can't believe I can't get around that next boulder. Uh-oh. None of that. That's so us. It's so human. And I think you're right. Sure, the animals do have an energetic premonition that something's shifting, something's changing, but they certainly don't get crazy about it. I mean,
Mm,
take something as simple as, you and I flip on the weather station and it says, oh, you got a 6-inch snowstorm coming in. Well, whether you want to admit to it or not, you don't just sit back and go, oh, great, chill. You suddenly go,
mm,
oh my God, do we have enough milk for the kids for dinner? Oh, do we have enough fuel in the fuel tank? Oh my gosh, I got to go put a blanket on the horse because it's going to be windy. Ah, bah, 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 bah. That's all us. That's all
mm,
us because it isn't living in the moment and it's attaching an expectation to something that hasn't even happened yet, which is
mm.
also something that I really find very interesting when I think about your adventure to go west with the whole entourage. It just amazes me. But anyway, what I do think is how many of us in our human bodies spend an awful lot of our energy worrying about something that has not even come to fruition, that has not even birthed itself into some
Mm,
perception of reality, but yet we place a lot of wasted energy in, call it what you want, call it the fear. Oh my gosh, is it really going to snow 6 inches? Oh my gosh, the shovel handle's broken. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so far it's a sunny day and it hasn't even started to snow yet. When you do come across people who truly flow like nature, it's not that they don't take into consideration what may be coming down the pike, they just don't attach a lot to it.
mm,
You know what I mean? They don't disrupt their capacity to kind of go with the flow, stay in flow, just sort of take the moguls as they come, so to speak,
mhm,
and make sure you got your tuned up when you hit them. But
mhm.
they just sort of move along with it as opposed to let me fight against it, let me resist it, let me worry about it, let me create all these falsehoods that haven't even happened yet.
Right.
And when you travel the way you did, I think it's very, very interesting because sure, you can take a map and you can plan out your trip, but I'm pretty dang sure you didn't plan to be on the side of the road with a truck and trailer. I'm pretty dang
Mhm.
sure you didn't plan on here we are and we have so much cloud cover we can't actually see 10 feet in front of us. Like all those things that just sort of show up. There's no point in fussing with them because you can't do anything about it anyway.
Well, I think I will say like two things I'm thinking about. One is fear. And if you're working with a young horse or a horse who's really wound up, like an Arab, right? And they see a balloon for the first time and they're like terrified, right? And what is it? There's nothing that's happened with the balloon. It's just that it exists and they don't know what it is. And being a prey animal, right? That fear of what is it? And then the pressure often that's being applied by a human or outside force to move past said balloon. And then if you think of the older, wiser horse where that trust has been established, they've either seen the balloon before or they're like, whatever, if my human says we can go by it, I know it's probably not going to jump out and bite me because over the last 10 years we've been together, or 10 months, or whatever it is, it's been okay. And I'm going to trust and work through this fear that it's going to kill me, even though nothing's happened with the balloon. It just is, right?
Yeah.
So I feel with people, the older, wiser, and something that I'm seeing in our culture is this sort of bitterness that grows in people because we don't process it in the same way and just say, yeah, it's just a balloon. Like, let's let it go, just move past it, right? So I think that's coming up. And then the other thing I'm thinking about with your question about like, what do? You've got to just move through it. There's nothing you can really do to prepare. I'm thinking about the Boy Scouts, always be prepared. And
Right.
so one thing we did, which I'm not sure if you've heard of, but US Rider is basically like AAA for horse people. And
Yes.
I had had enough experiences of dropping a tire in a blizzard and having to get horses evacuated into a horse motel that I knew. I mean, I keep my US Rider current. Actually, I better double check that I'm up to date for this next year. But during hauling season, I for sure have my US Rider phone number programmed into my phone. And I know that whatever happens, I'm going to be able to call them. They're going to be able to help me with my horses. That's their first question is, are you safe? Are your horses safe? And then we'll figure out what we need to do with the truck and the trailer and so on. And so we had a really interesting experience in the desert, the Flaming Gorge of Utah, where we were driving sort of mid-morning. It was really fresh blacktop and we blew a tire. Go figure, right? So we blew a tire and we pulled over and it was like 100 degrees. It was really hot. And so I knew we've got to offload these horses. They can't sit in this steel box. We've got to really pay attention to the babies. We can't have them overheat. We're going to have to go back and forth, turning on the AC and also being out in the breeze. We found some shady trees sort of nearby. And like, we're going to have to wait because I called US Rider and they said, I'm so sorry, but a lot of folks have blown tires and we will get to you in about 3 hours, hopefully sooner. So, we had settled into pulling out water, like just getting comfortable. And the next thing I know, I thought it was a mirage. I saw this man. I really did. I saw this man walking towards me in a construction vest. And he was like, "Hey, I just saw you pulled over having a bad time. I have a tow truck and let me help you out. I grew up on a ranch. I can help you move your horses. You're in a really bad spot. It's like a blind corner here," which I didn't know because I don't know the road. And he was like, a quarter mile down the road, there's a proper pullout. Like, let's get you down there. So sure enough, he and my helper start walking the horses. She's got one of the babies tied on her, and I throw the toddler in the back and I slowly roll the trailer down to this next spot. And she was the wife of a worship pastor. So she kept seeing like Christian stories everywhere she looked, right? So she said to me, she said, "Did you see his name? Did you see his name on his name tag?" Like, no, no, like, what? She's like, "It's Gabe." Like, Gabe? I'm not,
Like
very up to date with
Gabriel,
that. Yeah,
right?
she's like, the angel
Right.
Gabriel.
Like Archangel Gabriel, right?
Oh, sure enough, the angel Gabriel appeared to us out of the desert. No, he was
Right.
not the person called by US Rider. Yes, he just happened to be coming by. Yes, he happened to own a shop where they could look at our trailer. Yes, he happened to own horse pasture where our horses could be turned out while he looked at said trailer. Yes, he had two children, a little bit older than our children, a wife and pigs and all kinds of things where our kids could hang out and everyone got their needs met for like the 4 or 5 hours it took
for us to get everything straightened out because our axle
Okay,
was
there's no
tweaked.
coincidence there, by the way, just saying.
You know what I'm saying though is like there are two things, and that's the paradox. One is you got to be prepared, and the other is from experience, you know it is going to work out. Everything's working out for me all the time, and we don't even
Yes.
know what kind of incredible story is going to come through this. And so for me, like
Right.
a piece of working with horses is even when it's like, oh my God, the balloon, oh my God, 100 degrees in the desert, blown tire, 3 hours. Like you just trust it. You really work on just manifesting that old wise horse within of it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. So I think, when you first said, hey, your horses, they just jump in that aluminum box. They have no idea where you're going. And I think to myself, because anyone who's got horses, horses don't just randomly think it's a great idea to jump on an enclosed box
Mhm.
and just
Mhm.
hang out. And I don't know whether you haul with a stock or with a closed trailer, but certainly an animal that's a prey animal that's survival instincts are designed for fight flight, got to get out of here if the
Mhm.
balloon's in the air. The idea of, oh, here, let me willingly jump onto this rectangular box that is completely metal and let you close all the doors and hang out and chill, and this will be all good and great. There's an enormous piece of a developed connection relationship of trust that goes on.
Yeah.
And for people who struggle a lot with getting their animals from A to B, one of the things that I always question is certainly how are you showing up when you ask your horse to do
Mhm.
something with you? Like
Mhm.
in what state of being are you making this request? It is not something that's natural to them. We certainly do have to teach them, but that component of being quiet, grounded, confident, and encouraging, reflecting that you are worthy of their trust is going to take you a long, long way. A
Oh
long
yeah.
way.
Yeah, for
And oh
sure.
my gosh, I think that's the same with our connection and relationship, truthfully, to ourselves. Like, as we are
Mhm.
digging in to really unlock the amazingness of who we really are, we're going to come across those experiences of now what, and just like you in the desert, oh, now what, you've got two ways to go. You can either think worst case scenario, or you can lean into what you know to be the truth of, this is all going to work out, it's good, I'm
Mhm.
okay. Why? Because I have that trust.
Yeah, totally.
So in the flip side of when we talk about I have that trust is, in order to have that trust, you also have to be willing to surrender, release the need that you've got to have your finger on the control switch for everything. So
Uh-huh.
so many things with your journey just bring up so many components to the whole idea of how can we set aside some of these kind of ingrained habits that we've acquired over our lifetime that
Mhm.
kind of create a little bit of a roadblock to walking home to the amazingness, the beauty and the power and the groundedness, as well as the etherealness of who we really, really
Mhm.
are. Yeah,
Yeah,
so many
for
good
sure. I
things.
think like one thing I'm thinking of is A, it's a practice.
Hmm.
And B, you referred to this earlier, but like the experience of being sick and just how sick you are. And sometimes you don't really know how sick you are unless you've had the experience of being well. And I would also add in being injured or hurt, right? So I think like what I'm thinking about is this question I asked a woman I was traveling with. I said, my meditation this morning was, what would complete faith and trust in the universe feel like to you today? And her answer was disappointment.
Really?
And I was really stunned. Also, yeah, I also realized like, wow, how
Huh.
off we can be. Like we're all gonna have moments where maybe it feels that way, right? Like how would it feel to just lay in bed all today? You know what? When you're sick, can't think of doing anything else. And then when you're well, you might be like, I'd feel like I'm having some FOMO. It's a sunny day. I want to go play with the horses, whatever.
Yeah.
As a thing, the lifestyle. part of the adventure paradox. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is like, you and I both know for a horse to load up in a horse trailer, perfect practices have taken place. And many, many people struggle with that perfect practice, by the way. Not all horses load easily in horse trailers, right?
Truth,
But if you
truth.
develop the practice of loading, the practice of that daily meditation of trust, the practice of everything's working out for me, the practice of that programming, just like a rescue horse who can come from really not trusting people, maybe having had very bad experiences, to over time, oh, wow, you're okay. And they may have funny quirks, that are just a part of them that you learn to trust and prepare for and anticipate that they might pull back even after hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice of working on not pulling back. Like a horse is a horse, a human is a human. So I think for me, it's really important to acknowledge that and acknowledge the paradox of the cycle. And I was talking to another gal this morning who was like, gosh, I was just so off the last time we were hanging out and I want to take responsibility for that. And I was like, I was thinking maybe we could live in a world where everyone could stop pretending not to be depressed, for example, if you are. Like to
Right?
really
Like there's
own
nothing wrong with
you
saying,
might
"Hey man, I'm having a crappy day. I'm in
exactly
a
you might
moment.
be
I'm
right.
having a moment here." Right? Yes.
Bingo. I mean, like if we look at our animals, they're having that moment with the balloon, for example. Like we're having a moment barking at the neighbor dogs coming by because this is my space and I want to claim it. I'm having a moment trying to obey my mom telling me not to bark, but oh, I want to
Right.
because it feels good to bark because I'm programmed to bark. It's like I feel like so often we're cutting off our inherent nature. And so then we don't get to the root cause of what's really driving us and maybe where we really belong. Like, what's it really feel like to come home? Because I think sometimes coming home, like, we have to wait until we're dog tired to get home, or we never want to
Yeah.
leave home because it could be scary out there, right? Like, those are those paradoxes of like, what does homeostasis look like? Like, what did you really come here for? It's life. This one, why are you here? And are you living it to your fullest? And there will be moments that to prove your quote fullness, maybe you are sick, you overdid it, maybe you got hurt, whatever it is, that too becomes part of the path. It is the way, like you said earlier.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Misconstruing, misunderstanding, miss something. I'll come up with the word in a minute, where we think like, oh, coming home means it's all going to be rainbows and butterflies. But to
Ah,
me, coming home means that you're able to take in both ends of the spectrum, the
mm,
duality of what life is here to offer us. It means
mm,
that, you're going to have the bad day, you're going to have the depression, you're going to have the headache day, you're going to have the grieving day, you're going to have the dog tired day, just as you're going to have the flip side of that of, unconditional bliss, joy, wonder, amazement, all the things. And coming home doesn't equal you get to just live in that one little piece of it, that in the glory piece of it. It really means that you've discovered how to sit with and accept and call it forgive if you want, when you're having the not so pretty perfect moments, and understand that that's fine, that's okay too, that's just all part of the gig. But the
yep.
whole thing, when we talk about, if you really want to get fancy pantsy about it, look at the meaning of what is homeostasis. It isn't one-sided.
Mm,
Pendulums don't swing only one way. Scales don't
mhm,
only hang
mm,
out only one side. Why? Because everything has a up and a down, a back and a forth, a duality, a spectrum. I don't care what you want to call it, but we're here for all of that. And so when I think about, what does it mean to walk home to your heart? What does it mean to walk home to yourself? What does it mean to feel okay in your own being and where you are? It isn't that you're ignoring the, oh, I'm having a shitty day. It's the, I'm
mhm.
having that day, and that's okay too. And that's okay too.
Shadow work or the duality, night and day, sick and I mean, there's your classic marriage in sickness and in health, right?
Right?
It's the
Yes.
human vow to this life, not necessarily to each other, but to ourselves, to this body, which is ultimately our home in this lifetime. And I think the other thing I'm thinking about is like, because of the world we live in, I mean, let's imagine 100 years ago, I have relatives all across the country. I would really not know many of them, like at all. You know, we might or might not write letters, but we really wouldn't know each other. Now I can know my cousins in California and my
Yep.
cousins in Virginia and my cousins in Chicago quite well. I can keep up with them. I can see their posts and kids' birthdays on social media. It's so different. And it also, I think that idea of having many homes, but having one perhaps where you really thrive more than the others.
I think that's a reality for many of us. I'll give you an example. I live in it's not the friendliest environment, I'll say, environmentally speaking, from a human perspective. We have more months of cold and winter and difficulty than we do any other time of year. And like
Mm.
you, we have a tremendously high infestation of ticks come spring and summer and fall, which of course makes you go, oh my gosh, I really?
Mm,
But I mean, that again is all part of the deal. But when I think about in all the places that I've lived over my lifetime, this when I return to this space for me, not only do I feel like it is a coming home, not because of the building that I live in,
mm,
but because of what everything around it brings to me in my heart. Just my lifestyle allows me to have such a firm, grounded connection with nature, of course,
mm,
with my animals, which are important to me. And it's almost like, I'm going to call it almost like an emotional tethering or reminder of
mm.
why it's important to return to the natural rhythm of how this earth moves.
Yeah.
And I used to live in the city. All through college, I lived in the city. And honestly, I couldn't wait to get out from that. But I was not raised in the country. I went to school in the city, and I've lived up here very rurally where I live now for, I don't know, 35 years, I guess. And it is what you say. There are different homes, but some resonate more deeply than others.
Hmm.
And I think that is what draws us to create certain kinds of lifestyles for ourselves. I
Hmm.
found it really interesting in your conversation that you had with Kathy Heller about her retelling of waking up to the sound of chickens with her
Hmm.
friend who put her and her family up for a week's time following the fires. And for you and I, like we take that as second nature, like, oh yeah, rooster's crowing, time to get up, or oh yeah, look, I have to go get the eggs so we can have some breakfast. Like that's second nature for us. We don't think twice about it. But when you stop for a minute and think of the amazingness of how do all these systems and cycles weave together to
Hmm.
provide us with this whole treasure hunt of life,
Hmm.
it's really amazing. And I think the things that you wrote about in your book, experienced on your 6,000-mile journey, um, all of the things have, I'm going to say, it opens one's eyes to the possibilities.
Mm.
It's sort of like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you
Yep.
know it, you can't unknow it. Once you
Yep.
hear it, you can't unhear it. Like all those cliche sayings that we hear, sort of like you don't know what you don't know till you do, like all those things, they're so true. They're just so true.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
think it's also, though, stepping into an alternate reality. Like, this is
Hmm.
where, having just traveled back from Italy, and my husband's mother is full Sicilian, right? So we have a lot of Italian sort of aspects of our relationship. One of our ongoing jokes, this actually circles back to the time being with animals and being on their time and being present. But my husband, it'll be like time to leave, and he'll be like, "How about another coffee? Like, there's no rush,
Like, what's the hurry?
I joke, I'm like, "Oh, cappuccino, more espresso, like it's Italian, don't leave, I have to give you more pasta, hold on, so it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like we can embrace in this life and what a gift it is, all aspects of ourselves. Like we can choose what we're going to lead with, and that comes back to that power of the mind, but also the power of the heart, because you have these moments where you just feel, oh, I've been missing this. The sound of a rooster crowing brings me home to my ancestors, to some other time and place, and I want more of that now. Like sometimes we need to go through that to remember because we forget.
We do. We do. And I think that in the remembering, when you have that feeling of, oh, I need more of this,
Mhm,
yeah, that's your heart, that's your intuition, that's your higher self saying, yes, you do. Come home. Yes, you do.
mhm,
Oh
mhm.
my gosh, this has been such a good talk, Kat. Thank you so much. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, so good. Tell the listeners, even if you change your name from Paradox to Perspectives, whatever, let us know, how do they get more of the amazingness of your stories, your life journey, your adventures, all of it. Where can they find you most easily?
Yeah. Well, I'm all over social media. Cat Caldwell Myers, also the Adventure Paradox podcast. You can listen to me weekly on the Mom's Adventure Paradox podcast. You can also check out my website, theadventureparadox.com. And I live outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming right now. I don't know if we talked about that, but I've got some retreats and VIP days and different offers to help people find their voice with animals in nature. So if you want to come out and hang, look me up. Would love to meet
Oh
you.
my gosh, that sounds so fabulous. That's definitely on the bucket list for me. I could
Yeah,
show up in your backyard with my little three place and my girls, and there you
totally.
go. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, so fun, so good. Well, listen, I know you have busyness ahead of you, and you actually sound really clear and with it for all the jet lag, honestly. So kudos to you. So hard to
Day
crisscross time
four.
zones, right?
For the record, it is day 4 now.
Okay, so you're good. You're coming off the jet lag roller coaster. You're
It's
almost
better.
through it.
It's better. Every day a little better. But yeah, it is
Yes.
like 4 o'clock. Oh my God, it feels like midnight and I want to go to sleep.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. But what a great adventure. So good. Listen, I
Absolutely.
thank you for your time. I will pop all of your links and connections and information straight into the show notes so people can grab a hold of you. And your book, I assume, is also on the website as well as through Amazon. I caught you through Amazon. Sounds great. All right. If you had any last words that you want to leave with the listeners, what would they be?
Oh, just
Mm,
remember to be home right where you are. Right now.
beautiful.
Right here,
I
right
love
now.
it. Perfect. Thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you, my dear. It's been a real treat. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And
Thanks again, everybody. That's a wrap here for Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, and we'll get this released shortly. Thanks
cool.
again.
Thank you, dear. Ciao.